I just want to mention that this series went from gruesome, realistic pseudo-snuff film to basically a extreme version of Ashton Kutcher's Pranked, and I loved it. Today I am covering the third entry in the infamous Japanese Guinea Pig franchise, and like I mentioned in the intro, it took a different style from the two previous entries. Instead of being a pseudo-snuff torture film, we have basically a dark, absurdist, surrealistic comedy. And I have to admit, I did laugh a lot at this. The film's plot is quite simple. I think this is probably the shortest in the series, and we're following this salaryman who has a miserable life. He basically hates his job, he doesn't get, the woman he lusts after, and he's terrible at his job and keeps getting basically chewed up by his boss, and his best friend, in fact his only friend, is dating the said girl that he wants, to go out with. But before that, we get the intro, which is a foreign man speaking in, I assume, English, even though I don't think the translation in Japanese or the subtitles are actually what that man is saying. However, he is describing to us that this is not only a film based on reality, this is an example of a scientific educational film, and that anything in this is possible. Which, for people who've seen this film, or people that will listen to me describe the rest of the feature, you might find it a bit silly. Because it is. Of course, the part of the Japanese salaryman that hates his life is probably the most realistic part of this film, which is sad, but very true. However, it takes a small twist whenever the man decides to go full hermit mode, and he doesn't want to go to work, and he just wants to stay in his apartment, watch TV, and make puppet shows with his feet. Yes, there's a scene where this man draws faces on his feet and basically makes a play of his life, where, the people are like, hey, this guy hasn't showed up for work in 4 days, who cares, and then his feet kiss. So if you have a male-centric foot fetish, this might be the film for you. Probably the best for that in the entire Guinea Pig franchise. And then after realizing that basically nobody gives a shit about him, he decides that it's time to end it all. He's gonna unalive Jeffrey Epstein himself. I just lost monetization on this video. Thank you. Unfunny jokes. However, when he slits his wrist in the wrong direction, by the way, I won't say because this video will get flagged as, something about, unaliving yourself. Let's just say that the way he does it isn't exactly the correct way if you ever thought of doing so. This video's getting fucked. But he realizes that he bleeds, but the bleeding stops. And that it doesn't really hurt. And then he tries harder to unalive himself and basically realizes that he can't die. Therefore, the title, He Never Dies. So what is this genius gonna do with that information? Take revenge on the people that mistreated him? Become a freak of nature and science? No. He decides to call one of his coworkers after thinking about calling a lot of people. So then he decides to call his colleague and only friend who's fucking the girl he's in love with at that particular moment. And you can see that he's not really like a friend. He gets the call and he's like, oh man, I'm busy, shit man, I have to wake up early, I actually have to go to work, I'm actually good at my job. And then our main character is like, oh, you charmer, you have a lady in your bed. And he's like, no, I'm not as popular as you with the ladies. And then he looks at, the girl he just had sex with, and they giggle because our main character isn't really popular with the ladies. If you haven't realized that by this time, I don't know what to say. But after a fucking long conversation on the phone, which for like a 40-minute film, a 3 to 4 minute long conversation on a phone feels pretty long. He's like, okay, I'll show up, I'll sacrifice my time. But when you get a phone call from one of your friends at like midnight and you hear like panic in his voice, I would assume the worst, and I would be down to go help my friend. However, a character is like, I'm gonna play a prank on my distressed friend. I'm gonna pretend to be Elvis and show up to his house with a Elvis mask and try to scare him. Well, he got Uno reverse card and he got spooked instead, because our main character shows up with like a ruler in his head and like a knife. Anyways, he shows up pretty messed up, and then our other character is of course scared because he doesn't get what's happening, and then our main character proceeds to torture him mentally by opening his stomach and throwing guts at the fella. And then our character proceeds to pass out of fear, because understandable, if you ever showed up to a friend's house and he'd open up his stomach and throw guts at you, think you'd be pretty confused and slightly scared. And during that time, the lady that our main character is in love with is just waiting in the car, and she's losing patience because it's been a while, and she decides to go into the apartment. And instead of being freaked out at the visual she's seeing, at that point our main character has decapitated himself and left it on his table. She just starts giving him shit for not cleaning up after himself. I fucking love this movie. So what does she do? Instead of being freaked out, well, she starts cleaning. She wakes up our passed out dude, and he also starts cleaning, and then he's like, oh, where should I put this porno VHS? And he's like, oh, hide it from her. The lady can't see, you know, the porno tape, but it's fine seeing my decapitated head on a fucking table. This was a wonderful experience. This was probably the best 40 minutes out of my life, which is sad, now that I think about it. If I should probably do like the main character of this movie. What did I think of He Never Dies? Well, I think you can figure it out. I fucking love this movie. It is peak dark comedy, and it's such a fucking shift, a tonal contrast from the previous film I reviewed from this franchise, and I just really genuinely love this film. It's not the best. I wouldn't say it's not as good as Flowers of Flesh and Blood. Sorry, that's I think the American remake. What the fuck was the name? No, Flowers of Flesh and Blood. That was the one. I've been drinking. But it's a completely different movie, and for what it is, I absolutely loved it. And honestly, I wouldn't think I'd enjoy this franchise so fucking much, but I can't wait to watch the further installments, especially because they have great titles like Android of Notre Dame and Mermaid in a Manhole. So if you want to see more of these guinea pig reviews, give this channel a subscribe. I also have a letterbox now, link in the description. And yeah, thank you for watching, and see you guys next week.